But we begin this hour with the only criteria that appears to matter most to Donald Trump when it comes to rising in the ranks of his administration: a blinding, unwavering loyalty to him. It outweighs experience, competence, or any other principles, especially as Trump pursues his dual obsessions: retribution against his perceived enemies and bolstering his big lie that the 2020 election was stolen. That has been on display this week with two of Trump's cabinet picks. First, there is Trump's announcement that he plans to nominate Todd Blanche to be the permanent head of the Justice Department, following a 2-month audition period where Blanche acted more like Trump's personal attorney again than the nation's top chief law enforcement officer. And now he's appointing Bill Pulte, his director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, to serve as the acting director of national intelligence. Never mind that Pulte has no known national security experience in a role that would oversee the nation's 18 intelligence agencies, or that numerous senators are questioning whether he even has a security clearance, considering he will be given access to all of the nation's most classified information. None of that matters to Trump, because he has voiced one main priority for Pulte during his tenure.
And it's an acting position. It's not a permanent. He's not going to be permanent because, I don't think he'd want to be permanent. But he's a very smart guy, and he may find out some things about the rigged elections.
And in an interview with the Wall Street Journal yesterday, Trump said he also wants Pulte to begin the process of firing employees in the ODNI, saying it is, quote, unnecessary and or too big. Quote, I'd like to see it smaller. I think there are a lot of people in there that shouldn't be there, Trump said, pointing to holdovers from the Biden and Obama administrations. Joining us now, John Brennan, former CIA director and MS Now senior national security intelligence analyst, and Mark Caputo, White House reporter for Axios. Gentlemen, welcome back to the weekend. Director Brennan, of course, I'm going to come to you first. So legally, the DNI is supposed to be someone from the national security, the intelligence apparatus, right? Listen to what President Trump had to say on Thursday about whether Bill Pulte has the necessary skills for this job.
Well, I do, and I think he does, actually, because he's smart, because a lot of national security, I wasn't greatly experienced in national security, and I think I've done a really great job with it. I would say that Bill is a guy that will be able to figure it out very quickly. Again, it's short term, but he may be very effective for a short period of
time. Director Brennan, is the DNI a job where someone should just be able to figure it out very quickly?
No. And it's very clear that Bill Pulte has no intelligence or national security experience. He has not had any type of security clearances in the past. In fact, I would argue that he is disqualified from having a security clearance because how he abused his authority and his position in the Federal Housing and Finance Authority when he accessed personal records to bring these spurious claims against Lisa Cook and Letitia James. So he clearly does not have any of the qualifications necessary from a substantive perspective. I think his qualification, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, is that he's willing to do Donald Trump's bidding. As Donald Trump said, maybe he'll go in there and find things in terms of rigged elections, because the Director of National Intelligence has access to all this country's secrets. I mean, overseeing the 18 intelligence agencies, he can do a lot of damage, and he can be there for 210 days.
Right.
That's an awfully long time. And so he has the ability, in fact, to misuse his authority here as well. He can push things out that are going to be selectively redacted and misrepresenting the facts, just the way previous DNIs have done, Tulsi Gabbard and John Ratcliffe when he served as DNI in the first Trump administration. So it's a very, very worrisome development, and I think it sends a very worrisome signal to the workforce. It's already demoralized because of what's going on in this administration, but also the signal it sends to our adversaries like Russia and China. Clearly, Donald Trump does not care about intelligence. It sends a bad signal to our allies and partners as well, because he's not giving the attention and the care that is needed in order to make sure that our national security apparatus is healthy and strong and is able to protect this country.
I'm going to read from the law that created the Director of National Intelligence job. Quote, any individual nominated for appointment as Director of National Intelligence shall have extensive national security expertise. Extensive national security expertise. I don't know if Tulsi had that either, but here we are. Mr. Caputo,
sir.
One of the things that is, I think, people watching could probably use a good explanation on. How was the White House thinking about why the DNI would be focused on either the 2020 election, the 2024 election, or the 2026 election? They actually don't have a lot to do with each other, but this White House is doing it differently.
Because this White House is a top-down reflection of the president, and what the president wants, he gets. And what does the president want out of DNI? Number one, he doesn't think DNI should exist. In the transition, he was openly asking, like, why do I even need this agency? We've got the CIA. There's a reason John Brennan, or better said, John Ratcliffe, the former DNI director under Trump 1, decided to become CIA director under Trump 2, because Trump doesn't like the position. And so what he has in Pulte is a guy who's willing to go in there and fire people. They have two beliefs. One is that there's a deep state, and the other is that there's a lot of dead wood in the agency that other agencies had offloaded into them, other offices, and those people need to go. And so Pulte, I think pretty clear from what the president said, his job is to go in there and take an axe to the budget.
To doge it.
To doge it. Doge the hell out of it.
I do, Director Brennan, want to ask you about the FISA of this all, but just because this is a topic that we've actually talked about with you before, is there any merit to Trump's desire to consolidate the office?
Well, I think this legislation was passed over 20 years ago when it created the Office of Director of National Intelligence. And I do think that there's a need to have somebody to help orchestrate the 18 intelligence agencies from a budgetary standpoint, from a technological collaboration standpoint, from a number of reasons. You want to make sure the intelligence community is working together in harmony. And I think the DNI is the person to do that. Now, does the legislation need to be tweaked a bit? I would argue yes. Can there be some changes inside of the office? Are there some redundancies there? And I think any organization can go through some of those reforms. But having a Bill Pulte come in without any experience or understanding of the intelligence community to come in and, as you say, doge it?
Right.
I mean, I don't see that he's going to have the capability and the insight and the experience to be able to do this effectively and not hurt our national security.
And quickly, it seems like Republicans who are upset with the Pulte appointment, even in the acting position, are going to potentially hold up the reauthorization of Section 702, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. How much of a problem is that going to be for President Trump? I mean, in terms of actually being able to execute and act on the U.S. national security agenda? I mean, is this something that he can be forced into backtracking on because of how important the reauthorization is?
Well, in order to get the reauthorization, they're going to have to be Democrats and Republicans. They're going to have to work together on this. And it's clear that there's upsetment on both sides of the aisle. And they're going to be holding out that reauthorization unless there's going to be some type of adjustment there. So I think we're going to be seeing in the next several weeks this jockeying and whether or not the White House is going to pull back. But Donald Trump is somebody who I think enjoys the confrontation. And I don't see him saying that Bill Pulte is not going to do this. I mean, it could, but it does put the reauthorization, I think, in some jeopardy.
Mark, you're nodding along here.
Oh, I am. But remember is that Trump is just a brinksman. And when he decides to do something, he's going to do it. And if the Senate decides not to go along with FISA, yeah, sure, he'll fight for it. But once he's made this Pulte appointment, I would be shocked if they leveraged him in such a way, saying, we won't do FISA unless you get rid of Pulte, and he gets rid of Pulte. I just don't see that with him.
Mark, on Jackie's point about Republican resistance on FISA, that's all well and good, because last week we were talking about the YOLO caucus and how Republicans were finding their spine. And yet, yesterday, MS Now had this headline: Senate Republicans fall in line with Trump and pass reconciliation bill. And they passed billions of dollars in funding for ICE and the CPB. And that outweighed their complaints about the $1.776 billion thug fund. So the YOLO caucus that we were talking about last week, is that still a thing? Or are they really falling in line, and that is the beginning of more falling in line.
Breaking news, Republicans are still Republicans. They still vote for immigration crackdown legislation. And by and large, except for this one case in Iowa where Trump really didn't put his thumb much on the scale, like Donald Trump matters in the party. He got rid of a senator, right, Cassidy in Louisiana. He got rid of a House member, Massey in Kentucky, and others in between.
Wait,
they're scared.
You forgot he got rid of
John
two
Cornyn.
senators, Cassidy and Cornyn.
Oh, that's true. How could I forget Big John
By
Cornyn?
By the way,
Sitting
if
senator.
I had been here last weekend, I would not have joined the YOLO caucus chorus.
Oh, don't
you-
worry. I carried it for you.
But
Yeah.
part of it is like it's I think, and Mark, you tell me if I'm wrong, I feel like Democrats and even some folks that are on television and in the media want Republicans to have like a YOLO moment. But I don't think they are. I think waiting to do that and having, like, holding your breath, you're going to pass out because it's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, some of them are a little upset. Obviously, Cornyn and Cassidy. I mean,
Perturbed.
one of the reasons those guys didn't win their elections is they're kind of not good at this. And Donald Trump knows this, and Donald Trump is better at this than they are.
And this being politics.
Yeah.
Director, I'm going to actually try again on this question because I don't think I quite articulated it accurately the first time around. But how important is the reauthorization of FISA to being able to be the DNI?
Well, I think the FISA reauthorization is important for our national security. I don't know if Bill Pulte has even any familiarity with it. And I'm sure also that Donald Trump probably does not understand it either. But there is a consensus within the Congress, Democrats and Republicans, that see the FISA reauthorization as important. And there have been some adjustments and changes to it. But again, is Bill Pulte going to be pulled back by the White House as a result of this? I agree with Mark. I don't see Donald Trump, pulling back from this fight. He's going to push it, and he's going to put pressure on sufficient number of Republican senators to be able to get it through.